My dad's wife transformed my office into her wellness center and tried to double my rent. I left for a peaceful apartment, and now she's panicking because her beauty treatments aren't affordable without my income. I never expected to find myself caught in such an impossible living situation at 27. For most of my existence, it had just been Dad and me navigating life together after Mom's death, when I was barely 4. Those early years were difficult but special. We formed an unbreakable bond, two survivors against whatever challenges came our way. Everything changed when Dad fell for Caroline 5 years ago. Initially, I was genuinely thrilled to see happiness return to his eyes. After nearly 2 decades of solitude, he deserved someone who made him smile again. What I hadn't anticipated was Caroline's true nature emerging once the honeymoon phase faded. Caroline possessed what one might generously call a strong personality. Less generously, she was controlling, materialistic, and perpetually dissatisfied. Her obsession with maintaining her appearance through expensive cosmetic treatments was legendary in our neighborhood of Pinewood Heights. She'd return from appointments at Glendale Medical Spa with barely concealed glee, eager to showcase her latest refreshment to anyone unfortunate enough to be within earshot. After finishing my graduate degree in environmental science, I found myself needing affordable housing while establishing my career. The solution seemed obvious: rent the upstairs portion of Dad's Victorian-style home in the older part of town. We never formalized the arrangement with legal documents, but I consistently paid a fair monthly rate and covered my portion of utilities. I strived to be considerate about common spaces, though Caroline seemed determined to find fault regardless. "Your shoes are in the entryway again, Nathan," she'd comment with exaggerated patience. Or, "Don't you think someone occupying an entire floor should contribute more to the household expenses?" Dad typically retreated to his workshop in the garage during these exchanges, his conflict avoidance strategy perfected over years of Caroline's escalating demands. When the environmental consulting firm I worked for shifted to remote operations during the global health crisis, I needed a dedicated workspace. The small spare room upstairs had primarily served as storage, but I transformed it into a functional home office. Nothing extravagant, just a desk rescued from a thrift store, some IKEA shelving, and my collection of reference materials about watershed management and conservation. I required privacy for client video calls and a quiet space to analyze data and draft reports. Caroline rarely ventured upstairs. She preferred hosting her affluent friends in the meticulously decorated living room, where she could showcase her latest cosmetic enhancements and exotic teas, while they collectively bemoaned the challenges of maintaining youth in their 40s. Last October, I returned from a 3-day field research trip in the mountains to find my office completely transformed. My desk was gone, my books and research materials carelessly piled in the hallway, and my computer equipment stacked haphazardly in a corner. The room now contained several expensive yoga mats, a massive ornate mirror, and wall-to-wall spiritual quotations about finding inner balance. I stood frozen in the doorway, my field notes still clutched in my hand, utterly bewildered by the transformation. Downstairs, Caroline was arranging flowers in the dining room, acting as though nothing unusual had occurred. "What happened to my office?" I managed to ask, stunned by the complete disregard for my space and belongings. She barely glanced up from her flower arrangement. "I've decided to expand my wellness coaching business. The lighting is perfect up there, and I need a proper studio space for my clients." "But that's my office. I work from there. I'm paying rent for that space," I replied, struggling to maintain composure. "You have a bedroom, don't you?" she responded dismissively. "Set up in there if you absolutely must, or use the breakfast nook during business hours." When I pointed out that client calls required privacy and professional surroundings, she suggested the unthinkable, that I should increase my rent contribution if I expected exclusive use of multiple rooms. The entitlement in her tone was staggering. That evening, I attempted reasoning with Dad while Caroline attended her book club. He looked defeated before our conversation even began, his eyes tired behind his reading glasses. "Caroline's been stressed about finances lately," he explained hesitantly. "Her wellness coaching certification costs more than she anticipated, and she's due for another round of treatments at the medical spa. So she decided to commandeer my workspace without discussion," I countered incredulously. Dad sighed deeply. "Try to understand, Nathan. She thinks your current rent doesn't reflect fair market value for the space you're using. We had an agreement, Dad. You and I worked this out months before she moved in." "I know, son," he replied, rubbing his temples. "Maybe we can find a compromise? Perhaps share the space on alternating days?" It was painfully clear that Dad had surrendered his authority in his own home. Caroline had systematically eroded his confidence until he became a reluctant mediator rather than an equal partner or supportive father. The following morning brought another confrontation. I found Caroline in the kitchen preparing an elaborate smoothie, her designer athleisure wear suggesting she was preparing for another day of wellness coaching. "We need to discuss the office situation," I began firmly. "I've been paying for that space as part of our arrangement." She examined her manicure with exaggerated interest. "Darling, that pittance you contribute barely covers the property tax increase since you moved in. This house has appreciated considerably, and your arrangement should reflect current market realities." When I reminded her that Dad and I had established our agreement long before her arrival, she simply shrugged. "Circumstances evolve. If you want exclusive use of a second room, you'll need to increase your contribution substantially." She then named a figure that would have nearly depleted my monthly income, clearly designed to force me out rather than reach a reasonable solution. Her smug expression revealed she believed I had no alternatives. Later that week, I received a formal text message outlining her revised rental terms, providing 1 week to either accept or surrender the room. I forwarded it to Dad, hoping he might finally intervene. His response crushed me. "Let's keep things civil. Maybe we can meet somewhere in the middle." Meanwhile, Caroline had already begun hosting wellness sessions in her new studio, with incense and meditation music permeating the entire upper floor. Attempting to conduct professional video calls became nearly impossible with the background chanting and occasional bursts of group laughter. Her clients would tromp up and down the stairs, sometimes peering curiously into my bedroom, where I attempted to work at an uncomfortable folding table. After one particularly frustrating workday, where I missed critical data points due to distraction, I realized this situation was untenable. That evening, I searched online rental listings throughout Maple Ridge and surrounding communities. An apartment complex in Riverside Heights had a 1-bedroom unit available, slightly farther from my office but within my budget. The property manager seemed reasonable during our phone conversation, and the building offered modest amenities including a small fitness center where I could continue my running training. When I informed Dad about my decision to move, his expression reflected conflicting emotions, relief that the household tension might diminish, yet guilt about my departure. "She won't take this well," he murmured, staring into his coffee cup. "That's not my responsibility anymore," I replied gently. "I can't function professionally under these conditions." I half expected him to ask me to reconsider, to promise intervention, but he simply nodded with resignation. His silence spoke volumes about the dynamics that had developed in his household. Caroline's reaction to my moving announcement was theatrical. Initially, she expressed shock, then quickly pivoted to accusations about family loyalty and financial abandonment. During her less guarded moments, she revealed her true concerns. Without my monthly contribution, her cosmetic maintenance and wellness certification plans would require significant modification. The days preceding my move became increasingly hostile. Caroline implemented arbitrary rules about when I could pack and which entrance I could use for removing boxes. She scrutinized every wall and surface, threatening additional charges for any marks or scratches. Her wellness sessions mysteriously expanded to block hallway access during prime packing hours. I deliberately scheduled my move during her standing appointment at Glendale Medical Spa. Dad offered assistance, but I suggested he maintain plausible deniability to minimize household conflict. A colleague from work helped load my belongings into his truck instead. The evening before my departure, Caroline cornered me in the kitchen. Her tone had transformed from hostility to saccharine persuasion. "This whole situation has gotten out of hand," she cooed. "If you're willing to accept the adjusted terms and apologize for the misunderstanding, perhaps we can revisit the office arrangement." The transparent desperation behind her sudden reconciliation attempt was almost pitiful. I declined politely but firmly, explaining I had signed a lease elsewhere. Her pleasant facade instantly dissolved into undisguised anger. "You're making a terrible mistake," she hissed. "Do you have any idea how difficult the rental market is? You'll never find comparable accommodations at that price." I chose not to engage further. Dad watched our exchange from the doorway, his expression a mixture of sorrow and something else. Perhaps admiration for my decision to break free. The following morning, I loaded my final possessions and handed Dad an envelope containing my last partial month's rent. Caroline emerged from the house demanding to know whether the payment included her studio usage fee. I simply embraced Dad, thanked him, and departed without acknowledging her question. My new apartment in Riverside Heights wasn't luxurious, but it offered something invaluable: peace. I arranged my bedroom to include a dedicated workspace near the window overlooking a small community garden. Without constant tension and interruption, my productivity improved dramatically. My supervisor noted the enhanced quality of my reports, leading to assignment on higher-profile environmental impact studies. 2 weeks after settling in, Dad called to share that Caroline was experiencing financial readjustment challenges. Without my monthly contribution, her cosmetic maintenance schedule had become unsustainable. She had apparently expected Dad to cover the difference, resulting in significant household conflict. She even suggested he contact me about returning, though to his credit, he refused. A few days later, my phone displayed Caroline's number. Against better judgment, I answered. Her voice contained none of her usual confidence as she proposed my return under revised terms, including guaranteed office access. When I declined, explaining I was content in my new situation, her tone shifted instantly to accusation and insult. I ended the call and blocked her number. Dad visited my apartment the following weekend. As he examined my modest but functional setup, I detected pride mingled with regret in his expression. Over coffee, he confessed the household atmosphere had deteriorated significantly. Caroline's wellness coaching business struggled without proper certification or business permits. Several neighbors had complained about commercial activity in a residential zone. Without my rent contribution and with declining client interest, her financial situation couldn't sustain her cosmetic maintenance routine, which apparently caused considerable distress. "I'm sorry I didn't handle things differently," Dad admitted, examining the environmental impact report I'd recently completed. "I created this problem by allowing boundaries to be crossed repeatedly." I reassured him that I understood the complicated dynamics, though privately I worried about his ongoing situation. As weeks passed, mutual friends reported that Caroline's wellness coaching venture had collapsed entirely. The Homeowners Association had issued formal complaints about commercial activities, and her uncertain certification status had deterred serious clients. Meanwhile, my career flourished in my peaceful new environment. I received a modest promotion, began contributing to larger watershed protection initiatives, and even started weekend hiking excursions with new friends from my apartment complex. Looking back 6 months later, I recognize that sometimes preserving your mental health requires difficult choices about family dynamics. While I miss daily interactions with Dad, our relationship has actually improved without Caroline's constant interference. We meet weekly for lunch at a neutral location, and I've noticed subtle changes in his demeanor, increased confidence and occasional references to Reevaluating his situation. I've learned that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's essential self-preservation. Caroline's attempt to reshape our household arrangement to fund her lifestyle ultimately backfired, costing her the reliable income I provided. More importantly, her actions revealed her true priorities to Dad in ways my words never could. My new independence came with challenges, but the freedom to work without manipulation and drama has proven invaluable. Sometimes walking away from toxic situations, even those involving family, is the healthiest choice you can make.